Alright everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video, Fantasy Hockey Mailbag for Week 9 of the Fantasy Hockey season. As always, a video presented by FanDuel Canada, #1 sportsbook in North America, the best place to be placing all your NHL bets this hockey season. So the mailbag this week, you guys continue to like this video, continue to drop your comments for future weeks. Love answering your guys' questions. We got some good ones today, just 6 today, but a lot of trades, add, drop advice, and then one rookie who's starting to burst on the scene and what we're going to be doing with him. Let's get into today's video. All right, so the first question, who do you drop between Johnny Gaudreau, Andrei Kuzmenko, or Pierre-Luc Dubois? I have to drop one of them in a bangers league. 3 points for goals, 2 points for an assist, half a point for shots and hits, and 0.25 points for blocks. So yeah, 3 players that I think so far this year have definitely been underwhelming. Johnny Gaudreau sticks out the most out of these 3 in my opinion here, and his numbers show it as well. 3 goals, just 10 assists so far in 26 games played. He's played the most games out of all 3 of these players while evaluating them. Kuzmenko, 22 games played. He's just coming back from an injury, and Pierre-Luc Dubois playing just 21 games played. LA just hasn't really played a ton of games so far to start off the year. They'll start playing a bunch soon. I think for me, the best drop here is Johnny Gaudreau. As I mentioned, he has played the most games at 26 games played, but his numbers really aren't encouraging compared to the rest of the guys. His time in the ice and his shots on goal are really the only thing keeping him afloat to stay fantasy relevant in 12, 14-man leagues, or 14-man leagues. In 12-man leagues, honestly, I think he's a drop. Like 13, he's almost half a point per game. There's definitely better options on the waiver wire, especially in those leagues where there's fewer teams. But yeah, as I mentioned, he has more shots on goal, obviously 56 shots on goal compared to the other 2, 38 and 34, and is playing about 19 minutes per game while the other 2 are playing about 16 minutes per game. Kuzmenko is a really interesting situation because last year he scored a ton of goals but had a really high shooting percentage. That just seems kind of how he operates, to be honest. And looking at it from a bigger scope as well, obviously you're going to want players on Vancouver and LA compared to a guy on Columbus. Columbus is scoring or offensive production super inconsistent. You'll see sometimes it'll be Boone Jenner. Laine starting to score some goals here. Fantilli is obviously playing really well, and then Zach Werenski on defense is a guy you're going to be able to rely on. Johnny Gaudreau, I don't think fits in that category for this team right now. And if you're looking at it from an analytical standpoint, Pierre-Luc Dubois leads all 3 of these players in expected goals for the season at 7.28. The other 2 guys hovering right around 5.5, which ranks in the top 150 or just inside the top 150 when looking at expected goals for across the NHL. So looking at it right now, obviously Johnny Gaudreau probably has the highest leash in terms of where he can potentially go. I just don't think we're necessarily going to see it with such a low shooting percentage right now. You know, Kuzmenko will be continue to play on that top line with Elias Peterson and continue to score goals. Pierre-Luc Dubois playing on an LA team that continues to score a lot of goals and play really solid defensively. Those top 3 lines are really well balanced. So I like where Pierre-Luc Dubois is as well. And if you're looking at his analytical numbers, I think those are solid. So drop Johnny Gaudreau out of those 3. The next question here, Ryan, question. Guy offered me Malkin, Patty Kane for Marner in a categories league, no shots or hits. Would you do this trade? I would honestly keep Marner. I've talked about it before in this series for Fantasy Mailbag. I prefer to I don't like trading 2 guys for 1 or vice versa. I just think you're always going to have a guy on your team there. You're going to have to drop someone else on your team. Obviously getting Evgeny Malkin and Patrick Kane, those are 2 guys that you'll probably start, but Patrick Kane, a lot of unknown with this guy right now. Looking at his season last year, he had 45 points in 54 games played with Chicago, got moved to New York where he had 12 points in 19 games, wasn't totally involved in the offense and really took him a little bit to get going there. And then in the playoffs, he was almost a point per game, but predominantly contributing in the assist department there. Mitch Marner, 1 point away from 100 points last year, finishing with 99 points. I think he could still get 100 points this year. I don't think that's off the table right now. 22 games played, 24 points. He has 8 goals on the season, just had a hat trick. He's definitely starting to heat up in terms of his point production there. Malkin started off really hot, was definitely a guy you could have sold high on at the beginning of the season. 21 points now through 24 games played, 10 goals, 11 assists, but through his last 7 games played, just 1 goal and 2 assists. So it's really slowed down here. Not really sure why. Rickard Rakell is now on IR. Maybe that's hurting him because this second line of Riley Smith, Evgeny Malkin, and Rakell were doing really well together. But since Rakell has been out and since there's been kind of like a mix of players in that new role for Rakell, it just hasn't really been the same for Malkin. So there's too much unknown to trade for with Patty Kane right now. I think he will be a staple in this Detroit offense because I think they lack a lot of depth offensively. You know, you have that top line or top 3 players with Raymond, DeBrincat, and Dylan Larkin. But apart from that, there's kind of just random guys filling in. Like David Perron is good, but he's pretty old. Patty Kane will definitely be an upgrade there. I just don't know how well he'll be able to produce. Marner, you know what you're going to get from him at this point, playing on a Toronto team, a top 6 that's going to finish top 5 in goals for at the end of the season. And then Malkin right now, I think we saw the peak of what he was going to show at the beginning of the season. I don't see him getting anywhere near that again, so I just keep Marner on your team. The next question here, I traded Mattchuck and Jake Wallman for Miro Heiskanen and Adrien Kempe. Do you think I lost or won this trade? This is a really tough one because it depends kind of how you view things. I think this is actually a very fair trade, but I think you're getting an upgrade in Miro Heiskanen and potentially a little bit of an upgrade on Adrien Kempe from Matthew Tkachuk, especially just right now, considering Tkachuk can't really find the back of the net. But the one thing to know with Matt Tkachuk, he's 8th in expected goals for so far this year, just has 4 goals to show for it. A 4% shooting percentage on the year, that's incredibly low. Last year and last 2 seasons, he's finished with 40 plus goals. His shooting percentage hovering right around 13 to 16%. So I definitely think we'll see some positive regression for Matthew Tkachuk coming soon here. Jake Wallman too, he's been great. He's tied 6th amongst defensemen with 5 goals so far in the season, 12 points on the season as well. Top 10 in block shots, something that I was actually quite surprised to see amongst defensemen right now. 62 block shots. Doesn't really contribute a ton in the hits department, but definitely gets a decent amount of shots on goal. Him and Gostisbehere are the 2 offensive defensemen, I would say, on that team right now. And he's ranked top 15 amongst defensemen in fantasy hockey scoring right now. Miro Heiskanen currently outside the top 50, but we've seen what this guy can do. He's starting to produce, definitely more in the assist department than the goal category that we're seeing Jake Wallman kind of flourish in right now. 13 assists for Miro Heiskanen, and has been slow in the hits and block shots department to start the year, but it's definitely starting to creep up a little bit more, his production there. And then Kempe here, he's a really interesting one too. His expected goals for ranked inside the top 50. He has 8 goals so far on the season. But one really interesting and important thing to note for Kempe, he plays on one of the best lines in the NHL, if not the best line over the past 365 days. If you look at since when this line was put together with Adrien Kempe, Anze Kopitar, and Quinton Byfield, since December 31st, 2022, they've outscored their opposing lines 45 to 16. So that's a huge thing to note. Obviously, this line dominates play whenever they're on the ice. They've shown it this year. Kempe, there was a period through November and the end of October where he was scoring a ton, finishing with 5 to 6 shots on goal every night. The LA Kings can go through spurts like that, and it's good to see that he's actually capitalizing on those chances. I think personally, Kempe and Heiskanen are the better get in this trade because we've seen what Kempe can do on a proven line, and that line will continue to do the same things they've done so far this year. And then Miro Heiskanen, you're getting him kind of on a buy low right now. I think this Dallas team will continue to score goals, and he'll continue to have a role on that power play and as their premier offensive defenseman here. I think Wallman is really the wild card here, although he started off playing really well. Will that translate for the rest of the season on this Detroit team? Who knows? So I think you're better off getting Heiskanen and Kempe. NHL same-game parlays are back on FanDuel this season. Offered in every single game, every single night. Unlike most books, you can include goals, points, and shots on goal. But the newest feature is the gift. Goal in the first 10 minutes. Looking at teams to target for the gift, here's the top 5 teams in goals per game last season. Here's a breakdown of goals in the first period from the 2021-22 season, as only 17% of games that season didn't have a goal in the first period. What will your NHL SGPs look like at FanDuel this season? The next question, talking about the rookie here, what do you think about Simon Nemec? So Nemec, second overall pick in the 2022 NHL draft behind Juraj Slafkovsky, back-to-back Slovaks taken in that NHL draft. He's mainly been playing with Utica, really solid numbers over in Utica as well. They have a pretty good AHL team, but now played his first game in the NHL against the Sharks on Friday because Dougie Hamilton is out and tore his pec. He had surgery on this torn pec, and they say he's out indefinitely, but from what I've seen, the timetable for his return or just the recovery from the surgery is about 4 to 6 months usually, so that's really long. So obviously, Nemec could see his role really increase on this Devils team if he continues to play really well like he did in that first game against the Sharks. He had 2 assists. He was 5th on the team in expected goals for, higher than a lot of the forwards on this team too, which is crazy. He had 3 shots on goal, and as I mentioned, 2 assists, played the most minutes of any defenseman on that Devils team in that game against the San Jose Sharks, playing on that top pair with Siegenthaler. The only guy that was close to him in minutes was Luke Hughes, so clearly it seems like Lindy Ruff is leaning on his young guys here with Dougie Hamilton out and just a more balanced kind of approach from the rest of the defensemen there. But if Nemec has that role of Dougie Hamilton's minutes and offensive role, he's absolutely an ad, a guy I would even try to trade for if Hamilton is out for 4 to 6 months. He's only 31% rostered right now. He's definitely going to be added in a lot of leagues as he continues to play here, so I would try to to hop on that train before it's too late. But I think Simon Nemec is a slam dunk if you can still get him at this point, and if not, try and trade for him. The next question I have here, I'm in a 16-man banger league. I have Robertson. Should I trade Stützle and Pietrangelo for Hintz and Pavelski? I personally would not do that. I would keep Stützle and Pietrangelo, especially in a 16-man league. If you're relying on one line to really have pretty much your entire points and really determine if you're going to win or lose a week, I don't think that's the best way to play fantasy hockey, because if the Stars play 2 games in 1 week and then that line has one bad game, you lose that week right there. So I think keeping a little bit more of a balanced approach, getting players in from all different types or all different teams here, I think is the better option here. I think you're losing out on some value if you just stack not only one team, this is just one line you're talking about, and although this is probably one of the best lines in the NHL, I still don't think it's really worth it. Like I mentioned, not too good to be relying on one team, nevertheless one line. So stick with Stützle, who started off hot, and I know he's been a little bit streaky, but I think he will continue to be a main scorer along with Brady Tkachuk on this Ottawa team. And then Pietrangelo as well. Vegas is going through a little bit of a funk right now with Shea Theodore out and a couple other guys who have been in and out of the lineup so far to start the year, but I think he'll start to pick it up and is also very valuable in bangers leagues. And I think you have the best piece of this line right now with Jason Robertson, a guy who's going to continue to score 30 to 40 goals for the next 3 or 4 years. All right, the last question we have, I talked about this guy earlier in this episode, but the question is Matthew Tkachuk for Forsberg, feeling kind of 50-50. Which side is stronger? Tkachuk looks to be struggling this season. Any thoughts? Totally agree. This is kind of 50-50 for me. And obviously you can look at the fantasy scoring to this point and see Forsberg's in 14th and Matthew Tkachuk's 53rd. But if you look at their analytics and their numbers, I think it's actually a lot closer than what you might think. Forsberg through 24 games played right now, 13 goals, 15 assists, so 28 points there. 97 shots on goal. Tkachuk, 95 shots on goal. He has 15 assists and 4 goals. So obviously has almost 10 points fewer than Filip Forsberg right now. But as I mentioned before, Matt Tkachuk, 8th in the NHL in expected goals for to start the year, along with 58 high danger chances for. That's top 5 in the NHL. So he will start to score. I think as this Florida team continues to get healthier and healthier, it'll just help Matt Tkachuk. And if you're looking at it maybe as more recent numbers, in November, let's look at their expected goals for. Both of these guys ranked in the top 20. Forsberg finishing 7th in the month of November, and then also had 12 goals and 8 assists on 61 shots on goal with 26 high danger chances. But Matt Tkachuk, 3 goals, 9 assists. So I'd say they're relatively equal in the assist department, but obviously Forsberg has the edge in the goal scoring department right now. But both of them had 61 shots on goal in November, which is kind of crazy. And then Tkachuk out-edged Forsberg in the high danger chances by just 4 or 5. So I think this will be a really solid. It's really hard to really figure out which one is going to be the top player here. But I think Filip Forsberg for the rest of the season is still the best bet. If he's on your team, I definitely wouldn't trade him for Matt Tkachuk. But if you have Matt Tkachuk, I also would say the same thing. I don't necessarily think I'd go out and trade for Filip Forsberg, because you're missing out on all the production that Matthew Tkachuk could have for the rest of the season, considering his numbers are there and he should start to score a lot more goals here. The one thing I will say, Tkachuk plays in the Eastern Conference, much tougher defensively, I will say. And then on the West Coast, playing in that division for the Nashville Predators, I think it'll be a little bit easier for Forsberg to score goals. You continue to play teams like Chicago, Arizona, even Edmonton right now, obviously not playing very well. So I think Filip Forsberg is still the better option at this point, but it is 50-50. If a gun to my head and I had to pick one, I would go with Filip Forsberg, considering he's a top 15 fantasy hockey scorer right now. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of Week 9 Fantasy Hockey Mailbag. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Drop those comments so for the next mailbag, I have even more ammo to get going for this episode. Be sure to download that FanDuel Canada app. The link is in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.